And Roger Thiel is in the studio with me. He is the author of a brand new book. It just came out. It's called America's Homefront Air War, the Civil Air Patrol Against German Submarines in World War II. And just, on the tail end of the 4th of July here. This is an absolutely amazing story. Roger's website, by the way, is America's Homefront War, Air War, excuse me, America's HomefrontAirWar.com. And Roger, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Great to have you with us. So this is the story of the Civil Air Patrol, which came into existence just, weeks before World War II?
Less than a week before Pearl Harbor.
Wow. And this was civilians patrolling the East Coast?
Yes, it's an amazing story. We're coming up on the 75th anniversary of World War II, of course. And as we do, nugget after nugget that have never been discovered before are becoming mined, and we're finally learning amazing things about the biggest event in all of world history.
There was largely a news blackout about who these guys were and what they were doing.
Generally, the story has always been known on a peripheral basis, but this is the first book ever written about it. It's kind of I call it a pocket story or a sleeper story of World War II.
But this was one of the first times that in modern history that civilians had been enlisted to do military service.
Oh, yeah. In the modern machinery age, the era of the internal combustion engine, they took light planes of the day, never designed to hold the bombs that they now bolted underneath them. And on an emergency basis, they flew out as far as 50 miles in little single-engine light planes at low altitude over the Atlantic Ocean looking for German U-boats.
And that's the thing that I think most Americans don't even realize is that World War II actually came to the United States. We had there was incredible losses off the East Coast.
It was what one historian calls America's worst ever defeat at sea. The amount of freighters and tankers lost to German U-boats, especially in the first year of the war, was staggering.
Staggering how?
As being many times worse than the tonnage lost at Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
And I have interviewed people, coastal dwellers at the time, who would look out and see a tanker burning as close as a mile or 2 miles from the American coastline and could feel the heat of the blaze on their faces.
Wow. Wow. So we had a Marine war going on right off the East Coast. And so these guys, these were civilians who were pilots who were flying these old, this is 1944, right? Or 45.
Oh, it would 44. Be the very beginning, Tom. It would be for the winter of 42, and they 42. Were for the first 18 months or so of the war.
Okay, and they're flying single-engine planes with fabric-coated wings, and many of them died at sea. They didn't even have inflatable rafts at first, right?
Yeah, they flew normal light planes of the day. They were flying as if we went to a modern light plane airport today and got some Skylanes and Cherokees and bolted bombs under them.
Amazing. So and the main thing from reading your book, the main thing that these folks were doing, these civilians, right, was scaring the hell out of the U-boats. The U-boats.
Exactly.
Tell us how that worked.
Well, the CAP went out originally unarmed, and they flew out over the Atlantic, say, starting in late or early March of 1942, and this is when they saw most of their U-boats. And they discovered that at least their presence really meant something, because the U-boats would crash dive upon seeing an airplane of any sort. And more than once, a CAP plane would see a U-boat about to discover a freighter or a tanker, and they flew way down low over the ocean and flew right towards the U-boat's periscope to scare it away. And they immediately crash dived, and they may have saved the life of every sailor on that freighter or tanker.
Wow. So lots and lots of freighters, tankers. I don't know if there were a lot of passenger ships going.
There were as well.
There were as well at that time, whose lives were saved by these civilians. And you've got all these great pictures. We're talking with Roger Thiel, his new book. It just became available. It's you can pick it up on Amazon and other places as of, just like this week. The website just went up. It's called America's Homefront Air War.com, and we'll put a link to that in our newsletter and on our website. But the book is America's Homefront Air War, Civil Air Patrol Against German Submarines in World War II.
And, of course, now, Tom, we talk about a few hotbed topics like armed civilians defending America. That's a pretty hot topic.
Yeah.
But then when we look at the Civil Air Patrol, they used civilian light planes, but some could argue did a better job than the military. So for folks on the other end of the political spectrum, there's the thought that maybe the plowshare, in this case, was mightier than the sword.
Wow, because this was civilians, civilians participating in the war.
Yeah.
And what happened to the Civil Air Patrol? It's still around, isn't it?
It is still around. It exists in a modern version. They do not exist in any more armed actions or anything of force. Civil Air Patrol became armed as the late spring and early summer of 42 came on. But by then, they had substantially done their job even before they became armed, because by all of this harassment, in only a span of 7 months, they had made the U-boats generally leave American waters.
Wow. So our East Coast was infested with German submarines, underwater boats, U-boats.
I'd call it severely patrolled, but yes.
Yeah, and they were laying mines, they were blowing up ships, and these volunteer civilians flying their own private airplanes.
And not signed into the full military. Wow. Everything about it, I've been, since I first heard about this back in the late 70s, I took an interest in it, had the chance to interview some veterans while they were still with us.
Yeah.
And I have been fascinated by the sheer uniqueness of it for over 30 years.
Yeah, and some of these guys actually got drafted. They had to stop flying for the Civil Air Patrol because they were not exempt from the draft.
They were paid by the day for their time. The aircraft owners were compensated on a per-hour basis. Right. Husbands and wives served at the same base often. Some guys flew right out of their own homes on armed missions. They had to fly under the jurisdiction of the CAA, which was the FAA, if you will, what we now have as the Federal Aviation Administration of its day. Right. And they even bought commercial insurance policies. Everything about it is unique.
We got to wrap it up. But Roger Thiel is the author. The website, americashomefrontairwar.com. And the book is America's Homefront Air War. Check it out. Roger, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. You bet.
And thank you for being with us today.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.